Lila Thompson had been a waitress at Rosie's diner for as long as she could remember. Or so it seemed. The small-town eatery wasn't glamorous, but it was the kind of place where the coffee was always fresh, the pie was homemade, and everyone seemed to know your name. Lila, with her auburn hair always pulled into a loose bun and her warm smile that never seemed to waver, was a fixture at Rosie's. Regulars adored her not just because she remembered their usual orders but because she remembered them, their birthdays, their joys, and even the things they tried to hide behind polite smiles. The diner had been her safe haven after a string of disappointments in her early 20s. College had been a dream that ended too soon, money running out before her first year was through. Jobs came and went until she landed at Rosie's, where the work was hard but honest. Her paycheck was modest, just enough to cover rent for her tiny studio apartment and keep her rusting car running. Yet Lila had a way of finding beauty in simplicity, in the rhythm of pouring coffee, refilling salt shakers, and chatting with customers who came in seeking more than just food. It was a particularly cold evening in late February when the diner's bell jingled, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Lila looked up from the register to see a young woman step inside, holding the hand of a little girl bundled up in a coat that was 2 sizes too big. The woman scanned the room with uncertain eyes before settling into a corner booth. She helped her daughter shrug off the oversized coat, revealing a threadbare sweater beneath. The little girl, clutching a well-loved stuffed rabbit with one floppy ear, looked around curiously before her gaze landed on the dessert case near the counter. Lila grabbed a menu and walked over, her practiced smile brightening her face. "Hi there, welcome to Rosie's," she greeted them warmly. "Can I get you started with something warm? Maybe some hot chocolate for the little one." The woman hesitated, her fingers clutching the edge of the menu. "Just coffee for now," she said softly, her voice tight. Lila noticed the way her eyes flicked toward the prices on the menu, her lips pressing together in a thin line. "Of course," Lila replied, keeping her tone light. She scribbled the order on her notepad and turned to the little girl. "What's your bunny's name?" The girl looked up shyly. "Mr. Hops," she said, her voice barely audible. "Well, Mr. Hops looks like he's had lots of adventures," Lila said, crouching slightly to meet the girl's eyes. "I'll be right back with your coffee." When she returned, Lila carried not only the steaming mugs of coffee but also a small plate of cookies, the kind with rainbow sprinkles that were a favorite among the diner's younger visitors. She placed them on the table with a conspiratorial wink. "These are on the house," she said. The little girl's eyes widened as she reached for a cookie, and the woman murmured a hesitant but heartfelt "Thank you." As the evening wore on, Lila couldn't help but glance over at the pair. The woman sat hunched over her coffee, her shoulders stiff as though carrying a weight she couldn't put down. She kept glancing at her daughter, who was now giggling softly as she made Mr. Hops dance across the table. When it came time for the bill, Lila saw the woman pulling out a worn wallet, her fingers counting the crumpled bills and coins inside. The hesitation in her movement spoke volumes. Lila walked over and placed her hand gently on the edge of the table. "It's all taken care of," she said softly. The woman looked up, her face a mixture of relief and embarrassment. "I can't let you do that," she said, shaking her head. "Please," Lila insisted, her voice firm but kind. "It's just a little kindness. You don't need to worry about it tonight." Tears welled up in the woman's eyes, and she clasped Lila's hand briefly before letting go. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She reached over and pulled her daughter close, kissing the top of her head. Lila watched them leave the diner a few minutes later, the little girl skipping happily beside her mother as they disappeared into the frosty night. A sense of warmth spread through her chest, a rare but cherished feeling that reminded her why she loved her job. Unbeknownst to her, someone else had been watching the entire interaction. Seated a few tables away was a man in a tailored suit, his polished appearance standing out in the humble diner. He had arrived earlier in the evening, quietly ordering a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. As he stirred cream into his cup, he had noticed Lila's attentiveness, the way she treated each customer like they mattered. Her small act of kindness toward the woman and her daughter hadn't gone unnoticed. When Lila approached his table to clear his empty plate, the man smiled. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I couldn't help but notice what you did earlier." "Oh, that," Lila said with a modest laugh. "It was nothing, really. Just a little gesture." The man shook his head. "It wasn't nothing. You made a difference tonight." Lila blushed, unsure of what to say. She nodded politely, thanked him for coming in, and returned to her work. As the diner's lights dimmed at the end of the night, signaling the close of another long shift, she had no idea that her simple act of compassion had set into motion events that would change her life forever. The following days at Rosie's diner unfolded much like any other. The morning rush brought the usual parade of regulars: old Mr. Grayson with his crossword puzzle and black coffee, the local teachers grabbing breakfast before school, and construction workers fueling up for the day ahead. Lila moved through her shifts with her characteristic warmth, smiling through tired feet and the occasional grumpy customer. If the memory of the young woman and her daughter lingered in her mind, it was only because it had felt good to help, however briefly. But something was different about that cold Thursday evening. What Lila couldn't know was that the man in the tailored suit, quietly observant in the corner, had left Rosie's with more than just a favorable impression of the food. He had left with a story he intended to share. Miles Grant was his name. A venture capitalist and trusted confidant to Ethan Carter, the CEO of the Carter Group. Ethan owned an expansive portfolio of businesses, including the chain of family-owned restaurants that had, through years of expansion, grown into a household name. Though Rosie's Diner wasn't one of those establishments, Miles had stopped in on a whim during a business trip, charmed by its old-fashioned charm and promise of homemade meals. Back at his hotel that evening, as Miles sipped a nightcap, he couldn't shake the memory of the waitress who had gone out of her way to help someone she didn't know. He considered how rare such selflessness was, especially when it came from someone whose own life likely wasn't easy. Lila's simple but profound act stirred something in him. And the next day, as he met Ethan for a scheduled lunch, Miles couldn't resist bringing it up. "You know," Miles said as they sat in the corner booth of a sleek downtown restaurant, "I had an interesting experience last night." Ethan, a man with sharp eyes and a businesslike demeanor, raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Do tell." Miles recounted the scene at Rosie's Diner: the waitress, the young mother, and the plate of cookies that had been offered without hesitation. As he spoke, Ethan leaned back in his seat, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "And you're telling me this because?" Ethan asked, though his tone carried genuine curiosity. "Because we need more people like that waitress," Miles replied. "The world's full of folks looking out for themselves. She wasn't. She saw someone struggling and acted on it. No hesitation, no strings attached." Ethan nodded slowly, tapping his fingers against the table. "It's a nice story, but what do you propose we do about it?" "That's up to you," Miles said with a shrug, though his tone hinted at a challenge. "You've got the resources to make a real impact. I just thought it was worth sharing." The conversation shifted to business matters, but the story lingered in Ethan's mind long after their lunch ended. Meanwhile, back at Rosie's, Lila's life continued its usual pace. The weekend brought larger crowds, and she worked double shifts to cover for a colleague who had called out sick. By Sunday night, her legs ached and her voice was hoarse from greeting customers and calling out orders to the kitchen. "Lila, you're a lifesaver," her manager Donna said as they locked up the diner. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Lila smiled tiredly. "It's nothing, really. Just doing my job." But the truth was, it wasn't nothing. Each shift, each customer she served, was part of a larger story she was writing without even knowing it. Lila didn't have much, but she gave what she could, whether it was a kind word, a free cookie, or covering a shift for a coworker. On Monday morning, Lila was surprised to find a letter waiting for her when she arrived at the diner. It wasn't the sort of place where mail usually came for employees, and her name scrawled on the front in bold handwriting piqued her curiosity. She opened it carefully, her heart racing slightly as she unfolded the paper. Dear Miss Thompson, my name is Ethan Carter, and I was recently made aware of your exceptional kindness toward a customer in need. Though we've never met, your actions have left a profound impression on someone whose opinion I greatly value. I'd like to meet you in person to discuss an opportunity that could make a difference in your life. The letter went on to include details for a meeting time and place. Lila stared at the words, her mind reeling. Who was Ethan Carter, and why was he interested in her? Donna noticed the stunned look on Lila's face and walked over. Everything okay? She asked. I think so, Lila said, holding up the letter. Do you know who Ethan Carter is? Donna's eyes widened. Ethan Carter? As in the CEO of the Carter Group? He's a big deal, Lila. What's he want with you? I have no idea, Lila admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Lila went about her work as usual, but her mind kept returning to the letter. She couldn't imagine what a man like Ethan Carter would want with someone like her. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the moment at the diner when she'd helped the young mother and her daughter. Could it have something to do with that? Though her doubts and worries kept her awake longer than usual, there was a quiet hope blooming inside her, a fragile seed of possibility that refused to be ignored. The day of the meeting arrived faster than Lila expected. Dressed in her best outfit, a simple blouse and slacks she reserved for special occasions, she nervously made her way to the downtown address included in the letter. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the cozy familiarity of Rosie's diner. As she stepped inside, the polished floors and quiet hum of efficiency made her feel out of place. A receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. Miss Thompson, she asked. Yes, Lila replied, clutching the strap of her purse. Mr. Carter is expecting you, the receptionist said, gesturing toward a set of elevators. Take the elevator to the 12th floor and someone will escort you from there. Lila nodded, murmured her thanks, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, her heart raced. She didn't know what to expect but told herself to remain calm. Whatever this was, she would handle it, just like she always did. When the elevator doors opened, a young woman in a tailored suit greeted her. Miss Thompson? Please, follow me, she said. They walked through a series of hallways lined with artwork before arriving at a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Behind a large desk sat a man with salt and pepper hair and a commanding presence. He stood as she entered, extending a hand with a smile that immediately put her at ease. Miss Thompson, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Ethan Carter, he said. Nice to meet you, Mr. Carter, Lila replied, shaking his hand. Please call me Ethan, he said, gesturing for her to sit. As she settled into the chair, Ethan leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. I understand you're wondering why I asked you here. Lila nodded. I have to admit, I'm a little curious. Ethan smiled. I heard about you from a trusted friend of mine, Miles Grant. He was at Rosie's diner last week and saw something that left a lasting impression on him. He told me about how you went out of your way to help a young mother and her child. It wasn't just what you did, but the way you did it with no expectation of anything in return. Lila felt her cheeks flush. I was just doing what felt right. It wasn't a big deal. That's where you're wrong, Ethan said, his tone serious. In my line of work, I meet all kinds of people, but the ones who stand out are those who lead with kindness. What you did may seem small to you, but to that mother and her daughter, it was everything. And to people like Miles and me, it's a reminder of what truly matters. Lila didn't know what to say. She shifted nervously in her seat, unsure of where the conversation was going. Ethan continued, his voice steady. I've spent my career building businesses, and while I've been fortunate, I've also learned that success means little if it isn't shared. When Miles told me about you, I knew I had to do something." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I'd like to offer you an opportunity, Miss Thompson." "An opportunity," Lila echoed, her brows furrowing in confusion. Ethan nodded. "The Carter Group is more than just a collection of businesses. We believe in investing in people. I'd like to sponsor you in pursuing any training or education you've dreamed of, whether it's hospitality management, culinary arts, or something else entirely. We'll cover the costs. And if you're interested, I'd also like to offer you a management trainee position at one of our restaurants. You'll be paid to learn and grow, with the potential to rise as far as your ambition takes you." Lila stared at him, stunned. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say you'll think about it," Ethan said with a kind smile. "I understand this is a lot to take in. Take your time, talk to your loved ones, and let me know when you're ready." Overwhelmed, Lila nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." Ethan. "This means more than I can put into words." As she left the office, her mind buzzed with possibilities. For years, she had dreamed of going back to school, but it had always felt out of reach. Now, for the first time, the door was open. Back at Rosie's diner that evening, Lila worked her shift as usual, though her thoughts were elsewhere. Donna noticed her distracted demeanor and cornered her during a quiet moment. "All right, spill it," Donna said, crossing her arms. "What's got you all starry-eyed?" Lila hesitated before sharing the news. As she explained Ethan's offer, Donna's eyes widened. "Lila? This is incredible," Donna said, her voice filled with excitement. "You deserve this more than anyone I know." "I don't know if I'm ready," Lila admitted. "What if I mess it up?" "You won't," Donna said firmly. "You've got a heart of gold, and people like Ethan Carter see that. This is your chance, Lila. Don't let fear hold you back." Though doubt lingered in the back of her mind, Lila couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something wonderful. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Lila. Ethan's offer weighed heavily on her mind, not because she doubted his sincerity, but because it seemed almost too good to be true. For years, her life had been defined by routines: early mornings at the diner, balancing the till, and long shifts that left her too tired to think about much else. The idea of stepping out of that familiar rhythm was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. She spent her evenings researching the options Ethan had mentioned. Hospitality management sounded exciting, but culinary arts tugged at her heartstrings. She'd always loved cooking, experimenting with recipes in her small kitchen during her rare days off. She imagined herself learning from professionals, creating dishes that brought people together the way Rosie's had done for her customers. Donna, ever supportive, encouraged her at every step. "You're a natural, Lila," she said one morning as they prepped the diner for the day. "Whether you're running a kitchen or managing a whole restaurant, you've got what it takes." Still, doubts lingered. Lila couldn't shake the feeling that taking this opportunity might mean leaving behind the life she'd built at Rosie's. The thought of saying goodbye to Donna, the regulars who felt like family, and the diner that had given her stability was bittersweet. One evening, she found herself seated at her small kitchen table, the letter from Ethan spread out before her. She picked up the phone and dialed the number he'd included. "Ethan Carter speaking," came the familiar voice on the other end. "Hi, Mr. Carter." "Ethan, it's Lila Thompson," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been thinking about your offer, and I'd like to accept." Ethan's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "That's wonderful to hear, Lila. You've made the right choice. We'll take care of everything from here." True to his word, Ethan's team sprang into action. Within days, Lila found herself enrolled in a culinary program at a nearby college, one known for its hands-on approach and exceptional instructors. The Carter Group even arranged for her shifts at Rosie's to be adjusted so she could attend classes without losing her income. Her first day in the program was nerve-wracking. Walking into the professional kitchen, surrounded by gleaming stainless steel and rows of eager students, Lila felt out of place. But as the instructor began explaining knife techniques, her nervousness gave way to curiosity. She found herself absorbed in the lessons, her hands moving instinctively as she diced vegetables and learned to balance flavors. Back at Rosie's, Lila's excitement was contagious. She practiced her new skills during slow hours, surprising Donna and the kitchen staff with her progress. The customers noticed too, especially when Lila began experimenting with small additions to the menu: a garnish here, a special sauce there. "Lila, this is amazing," Mr. Grayson said one morning, savoring a slice of pie with an extra drizzle of homemade caramel. "You've got a real gift." For the first time in years, Lila felt a sense of purpose beyond the day-to-day grind. She began to see herself not just as a waitress but as someone capable of creating something meaningful. As the weeks went by, Ethan continued to check in, offering words of encouragement and advice. During one call, he suggested Lila shadow a manager at one of the Carter Group's restaurants. "It'll give you a chance to see the business side of things," he explained. "I think you'll find it inspiring." The idea was daunting, but Lila agreed. The following week, she spent 2 days at a bustling restaurant downtown, observing how the manager balanced customer service, staff coordination, and financial responsibilities. Though it was overwhelming at first, Lila found herself fascinated by the intricate dance of running a successful establishment. "You've got a knack for this," the manager told her as they wrapped up the second day. "If you ever want to take the leap into management, I'd say you're a natural." Hearing those words gave Lila a confidence she hadn't felt before. For so long, she'd seen herself as just a waitress, someone whose potential was limited by her circumstances. Now she was beginning to see the possibilities that lay ahead. But the biggest surprise came one afternoon when Ethan invited her to lunch at a restaurant owned by the Carter Group. The place was elegant yet inviting, with warm lighting and carefully plated dishes. As they sat down, Ethan handed her a folder. "What's this?" Lila asked, opening it cautiously. "It's a plan," Ethan said with a smile. "We've been keeping an eye on your progress, and we think you're ready for the next step." Inside the folder was a proposal for Lila to take on a leadership role at a new restaurant the Carter Group was opening in a nearby town. The restaurant would focus on farm-to-table dining, a concept Lila had always admired. I don't know what to say," Lila said, her voice catching. "Say yes," Ethan replied. "This isn't just a job offer, Lila. It's a chance to make your mark, to create something uniquely yours. We'll be with you every step of the way." Tears filled Lila's eyes as she looked at the proposal. For the first time, she felt not just hopeful but certain that her life was changing for the better. Accepting Ethan's offer felt like stepping into a new chapter of her life, one that Lila hadn't even dared to imagine. The next few months were a whirlwind as she dove headfirst into her role as the future manager of the Carter Group's newest restaurant. Though the job came with challenges, Lila approached each day with the same dedication and kindness that had made her a standout waitress at Rosie's. The first task was helping to design the menu, a process that thrilled her. Working closely with a team of chefs, Lila drew inspiration from the culinary techniques she'd been learning and from the comforting flavors she'd grown up with. Her goal was simple: to create a menu that felt like home, full of dishes that brought people together. Lila also spent time learning the intricacies of restaurant management, from staffing and scheduling to inventory and marketing. Ethan personally mentored her, offering advice that was both practical and encouraging. "Running a restaurant isn't just about the food," he told her one afternoon during a meeting. "It's about creating an experience, a place where people feel valued. You already understand that better than most." As opening day approached, Lila couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought her here. She often replayed the moment at Rosie's diner when she'd helped the young mother and her daughter, a moment that seemed so small at the time, but had set everything in motion. She thought of Donna, who had been her constant cheerleader, and of the customers who had supported her with kind words and encouragement. To honor her roots, Lila decided to name the new restaurant Kindred Table, a nod to the connections people share over a meal. The name resonated deeply with her, capturing the spirit of the place she wanted to create. Opening day arrived on a crisp autumn morning. The restaurant was a vision of warmth and elegance, with rustic wooden tables, soft lighting, and greenery that made the space feel alive. The staff, carefully selected and trained under Lila's guidance, buzzed with excitement as they prepared to welcome their first customers. Ethan and Miles were among the first to arrive, along with Donna, who had made the trip from Rosie's to show her support. Seeing them there filled Lila with a mixture of pride and gratitude. As the doors opened and the first guests began to trickle in, Lila moved through the restaurant, greeting customers and checking on the staff. The energy in the room was electric, a hum of laughter and conversation that reminded her of why she had fallen in love with hospitality in the first place. Toward the end of the evening, Lila spotted a familiar face at one of the corner tables. It was the young mother she had helped months ago at Rosie's, sitting with her daughter, who now wore a bright pink sweater and held the same stuffed rabbit with one floppy ear. The woman's expression was radiant as she waved Lila over. "Lila," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We heard about your restaurant and had to come. This place is beautiful." "Thank you," Lila said, her heart swelling. "It means so much to see you here." The little girl beamed up at her. "Mr. Hops says the cookies are even better than before," she declared, holding up a half-eaten treat from the dessert menu. Lila laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "I'll make sure to tell the chef." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Lila stood in the middle of Kindred Table, taking it all in. The restaurant had been a dream she hadn't even known she had, and now it was real, a place where people came together, where kindness and good food could work their quiet magic. Ethan approached her, his expression full of pride. "You did it, Lila," he said. "This is just the beginning." Lila nodded, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you, or without all the people who believed in me." As she turned off the lights that night, locking the doors behind her, Lila felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her journey had started with a single act of kindness, and now she was ready to pay it forward in ways she had never imagined.